Started over here too. This is my first attempt at live streaming. I'm just going to double check it's working because I've never done it before. Let's see. Yeah, and you know, what's going on in Palestine at the moment, so there's a genocide going on, and the news does not seem to be covering it. Importance of international significance. ABC even, well, I shouldn't say even anymore, but the ABC in Australia is not, their coverage of, they basically weren't covering it yesterday, except to say that there was a case at the International Court of Justice. So I just felt compelled to stream it. If the news is not going to cover it, regardless of what your people's thoughts are on what's happening in Gaza, it is an important, it is newsworthy, and it's purely not to do news that they're not covering it. They don't want it to be covered, regardless of you know, anyone's intentions or thoughts on the matter. But I'm not going to pretend that I'm haven't you know, there's definitely a genocide going on. I'm not going to pretend that there's not, or that it's still to be decided whether it's happening. There's war crimes, there's ethnic cleansing, there's genocide happening at this time in Palestine. I hope people can hear me. I think not. I think not. I've got to change a few more things. So I apologise for this. Check. Well, it's coming streaming over. I don't know why I can't hear anything. Thanks to Dewey. Welcome. Wow, look at this. Are people able to hear me? Can people hear me? People being one person. Thanks for coming. This is my first attempt at live streaming. I can see the captions being made, so that's good. I guess that means sound is coming through. I don't know why I can't see it on my device or hear it. I'm going to assume it is working. Oh, beautiful. Thanks to Tilly. Look, I'm just a regular person. I'm not a political expert, but yeah, I'm just trying to provide options for people to see what's going on. You can definitely go direct to the International Court of Justice website and see it from there. But you know, I was watching it yesterday, and Palestine, South Africa put forward a very compelling case. Oh my gosh. I just realised I ate some dog food. I thought it was a little snack, but Lala, jump up. Up. Oh la la. I can confirm that they're not that delicious. I thought I was eating nuts. Gross. Oh la la. Yeah. There you go. So this live stream is also a dog food tasting challenge, and yeah, so I got a little bit distracted there. I was watching it yesterday, South Africa's case. There were the oral arguments. You know, it's overwhelmingly evident that there's a genocide going on. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and that you know, I'm still not convinced on the you know, if you watch footage of what's going on in Gaza, it's inarguable that there's a number of war crimes going on a daily basis. There's ethnic cleansing, and so today it will be the Israel will make their oral arguments defending their actions. Oh, I just realised as well that, you know, there are certain things I can or cannot say on a live stream, so I'm definitely learning as I go, and I might have to change down my language even just then, so that I think they can get picked up, and then, which is not a good thing when you're trying to cover, you know, such a case in the International Court of Justice. So that's yesterday's one. I'm going to click play on today's one. It should be starting at, well, it should be starting now. Let's see what's going on. It does look like it's still to start. I am curious what they will try to argue. Like, or whether they will even try and make a legal case. You know, will they? You can't argue that it's you know, it's just self-defense, because, you know, war self-defense does not justify. There's no justification for genocide or ethnic cleansing. Oh, I said those words. There's no justification for it. Doesn't matter if you're defending yourself. These are rules of international law that we've come up with for a reason. So will they try and make an argument of jurisdiction, or whether? But I think the court is already hearing it, so whether that has already been answered. So I also realised that I have to leave early. I gotta leave at 5:30 p.m. Western time, so I've got about an hour. And I might try and just leave it running if I leave. But you can always come directly to the UN.org website and watch it from there. But welcome to stay here. I thought, you know, it'd be a nice thing to watch it with other people. Here's the one from yesterday. It did start a little bit late, it seems. But I wonder if people can hear this. No, I don't think people can hear me on YouTube. So just to clarify again, this is yesterday's proceedings. This should start by itself when people... Today's one.
Please be seated. Sitting is open. The court meets today and will meet tomorrow under Article 74, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Court to hear the oral observations of the parties on the request for the indication of provisional measures submitted by the Republic of South Africa in the case concerning application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip, South Africa versus Israel. The court does not include upon the bench a judge of the nationality of either party. Accordingly, both parties avail themselves of the right under Article 31, Paragraph 3 of the statute to choose a judge ad hoc. South Africa has chosen Judge Dikgang Ernest Moseneke and Israel, Judge Aharon Barak. Article 20 of the statute provides that every member of the court shall, before taking up his duties, make a solemn declaration in open court that he will exercise his powers impartially and conscientiously. Pursuant to Article 31, Paragraph 6 of the statute, that same provision applies to judges ad hoc. Before inviting Judge Moseneke and Judge Barak to make their solemn declarations, I shall first, in accordance with custom, say a few words about their careers and qualifications. Judge Dikgang Ernest Moseneke, of South African nationality, has had a distinguished career as a judge, law practitioner, and academic. After obtaining degrees in English, political science, and law from the University of South Africa, he practiced as an attorney and an advocate with the Pretoria Bar. In 2001, he was appointed a judge on the High Court in Pretoria, and a year later, he became a judge on the Constitutional Court of South Africa, where he was Deputy Chief Justice for more than a decade and Acting Chief Justice in 2013 and 2014. Judge Moseneke is also an honorary professor in the Department of Jurisprudence at the University of Pretoria and has served as a Chancellor of the Pretoria Technikon and the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. Judge Moseneke has received numerous honorary doctorates and awards. I shall now say a few words about the career and qualifications of Judge Barak. Judge Aharon Barak, of Israeli nationality, has had an eminent career as a judge and law professor. He holds a PhD in law from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and served as the Dean of the Faculty of Law of that university between 1974 and 1975. He was appointed to the Israeli Supreme Court in 1978 and served as its president from 1995 to 2006. Prior to joining the Supreme Court, Judge Barak served as the Attorney General of the State of Israel between 1975 and 1978. He has taught law in a number of law schools, including Yale University, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and the Reichman University in Herzliya, Israel. Judge Barak has also written extensively in law and has received numerous honorary degrees and awards. In accordance with the order of precedence fixed by Article 7, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Court, I shall first invite Judge Moseneke to make the solemn declaration prescribed by the statute, and I request all those present to rise. Judge Moseneke, you have the floor.
I'm just going to fast forward to some more. I haven't got the timestamps, but there were some...
And demand this court's
some really good
intervention.
cases, arguments being
Every
made.
day there is
Which is
mounting
easy to do
irreparable loss
if you
of
are arguing
life,
for a genocide
property,
in Palestine.
dignity, and humanity for the Palestinian people. Our news feeds show graphic images of suffering that has become unbearable to watch. Nothing will stop the suffering except an order from this court. Without an indication of provisional measures, the atrocities will continue, with the Israeli Defense Force indicating that it intends pursuing this course of action for at least a year. In the words of the UN Under-Secretary General on 5 January 2024, I quote, "You think getting aid into Gaza is easy? Think again. 3 layers of inspections before trucks can even enter. Confusion and long queues. A growing list of rejected items. A crossing point meant for pedestrians, not trucks. Even enter. Another crossing point where trucks have been blocked by desperate, hungry communities. A destroyed commercial sector. Constant bombardments, poor communications, damaged roads, convoys shot at, delays at checkpoints, a traumatized and exhausted population crammed into a smaller and smaller sliver of land, shelters which have long exceeded their full capacity, aid workers themselves displaced, killed. This is an impossible situation for the people of Gaza and for those trying to help them. The fighting must stop." Close quote. Madam President, members of the court, that concludes my section on the genocidal conduct of Israel. I thank you for your patient attention, and I ask that you call Advocate Mukatobi to the podium to address the court on genocidal intent.
I thank Ms. Hassim, and I now invite Mr. Tembeke Mukatobi to address the court. You have the floor, sir.
I wanted to make, this into a fun thing, but it's not. It's my first stream, but, it's not really a fun topic, is it?
And distinguished members of the court.
But it's important.
It
So
is
here
a
we go.
privilege to appear before the court on behalf of South Africa. I will address Israel's genocidal intent. At this stage, the court is not required to determine that the only inference to be drawn from the available evidence is genocidal, to order provisional measures, as that is to decide the merits. Rather, the assessment of the existence of an intent to destroy could be made by the court only at the stage of the examination of the merits. That some of the alleged acts may also amount to atrocities other than genocide does not exclude the finding of plausible acts of genocide. Madam President, South Africa is not alone in drawing attention to Israel's genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians in Gaza. 15 United Nations special rapporteurs and 21 members of the United Nations working groups have warned that what is happening in Gaza reflects a genocide in the making and an overt intent to destroy the Palestinian people under occupation. Israel has a genocidal intent against the Palestinians in Gaza. That is evident from the way in which Israel's military attack is being conducted, which has been described by Ms. Hassim as C. It is systematic in its character and form. The mass displacement of the population of Gaza, headed into areas where they continue to be killed, and the deliberate creation of conditions that, quote, lead to a slow death, unquote. There is also the clear pattern of conduct, the targeting of family homes and civilian infrastructure, laying waste to vast areas of Gaza, and the bombing, shelling, and sniping of men, women, and children where they stand, the destruction of the health infrastructure, and lack of access to humanitarian assistance. So much so that as we stand today, 1% of the Palestinian population in Gaza has been systematically decimated, and 1 in 4 Gazans have been injured since 7 October. These two elements alone are capable of evidencing Israel's genocidal intent in relation to the whole or part of the Palestinian population in Gaza. However, third, there is an extraordinary feature in this case, that Israel's political leaders, military commanders, and persons holding official positions have systematically and in explicit terms declared their genocidal intent. And these statements are then repeated by soldiers on the ground in Gaza as they engage in the...
I'll be interested to hear what their defense is going to be, because they have said they're trying to do it without using those words. Israel has, and its leaders have been making their intent quite clear. So what will they argue when they get to court? The opposite? Or try and deny it? I'm not sure.
...of Hamas, or indeed Hamas generally, but is embedded in the fabric of Palestinian life in Gaza. On 7 October, in a televised address, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared war on Gaza, and I quote, "Israel had started clearing out the communities that have been infiltrated by terrorists." And he warned of an unprecedented price to be paid by the enemy. There are more than 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. Israel is the occupying power in control of Gaza. It controls entry, exit, and the internal movements of inside Gaza. And qua Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu exercises overall command over the Israeli Defense Force and in turn the Palestinians in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his address to the Israeli forces on 28 October 2023, preparing for the invasion of Gaza, urged the soldiers to remember what Amalek has done to you. This refers to the biblical command by God to Saul for the retaliatory destruction of an entire group of people known as the Amalekites, put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. The genocidal invocation to Amalek was anything but idle. It was repeated by Mr. Netanyahu in a letter to the Israeli Armed Forces on 3 November 2023. Madam President, let the Prime Minister's words speak for themselves.
Has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember, and we are fighting our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza. And
That was me.
The Deputy Speaker of the Knesset, Israel's parliament, has called for the erasure of the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. The Defense Force agrees. On 9 October, the Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, gave a situation update to the army, where he said that as Israel was imposing a complete siege on Gaza, there would be no electricity, no food, no...
I haven't really prepared anything, but just while we're waiting for the new one to start, I hope it starts before I need to leave. But if it doesn't, yeah, make sure you can get this URL. You can always watch it direct here. It's my first, like I said, first stream, but I didn't really sleep last night, so I was up late trying to sort all this technology out. And I'm out on a farm, so woke up like 6 or 5 a.m. with the gun going off, air gun. Oh, you know, like to keep the birds away. So yeah, you know, I should mention before everything goes off. It's like, you know, what practical steps can people take? There is on Sunday, if you're in Perth, there's at Forest Chase. There is an event. Go to Friends of Palestine WA if you want to know the details of that. I think it's around midday. Forest Chase Sunday, and we're going to do it every week until necessary. Yeah, but like I said, ABC is not really covering this case because it's not. That's pretty consistent with their coverage so far in the last. It's been going through 3 months now, and they haven't really covered it properly. You know, won't call things what they are, silencing journalists are leaving. You know, it's pretty shameful, really, for the ABC, which has just taken a huge hard turn in a conservative direction. But you know, just not following journalistic standards. I think when I switched, I put a video up last night where, you know, I changed to ABC News 24, which should be covering, you know, current events, press conferences, things like that, and now it's covering the sports highlights. And then after that, followed on with the business news. Mentioned that there was a court case. It didn't cover any of it. I mean, it was already ongoing. They should have, you know. It's pretty important. It's one. Israel is, you know, technically an ally of Australia. We support them diplomatically and militarily. So, you know, as a friend, if we are friends, we should be holding them to a standard, you know, because by not doing so, we actually undermine our own security. You know, we're kind of a laughingstock at this point, and as time passes, you know, South Africa is making a fantastic case, but you know, people can see, you know, that this is happening, and it's completely unacceptable for any country, but particularly for an ally of Australia. Our taxpayer dollars are, you know, supporting this. Penny Wong has finally supported a resolution at the UN for a ceasefire. I didn't even realise at the time, because I saw the government statement on their position, and from reading it, I didn't think they did support a ceasefire. So they've really been dragged kicking and screaming to that vote in the UN. They really don't want to be. They don't. You can tell they don't actually support it. But it's historic. You know, if we look back in the future, you know, if we look back at South Africa, you know, and the apartheid that was going on there, you know, it would look ridiculous for Australia not to support a ceasefire at the United Nations. But outside of that vote, they're very much supporting Israel. Just some of the news coverage has been atrocious. The stream is starting now as well for today. It's now 5 o'clock. I'll be able to hang around till 5:30. I don't know what's going to happen now. this. And that's what fix it.
Please be seated.
Okay, I think I've done it. This is going to be
The sitting is open.
incredibly
The court
infuriating, I
meets
feel.
this morning to hear the State of Israel present its single round of oral argument on the request for the indication of provisional measures submitted by the Republic of South Africa on 29 December 2023 in the case concerning
It might not be a legal
application
case in the end. It
of the
might just be,
Convention
you know,
on
them trying to
of
do
the crime of genocide in the Gaza Strip. South
more of a
Africa
media,
versus Israel.
you know, a
I shall now
media
give the
circus
floor to the
to
co-agent of Israel,
appeal
Mr. Talbecker.
to
You have the floor, Excellency.
international powers.
Madam President, distinguished members of the court, it is an honor to appear before you again on behalf of the State of Israel. The State of Israel is singularly aware of why the Genocide Convention, which has been invoked in these proceedings, was adopted. Seared in our collective memory is the systematic murder of 6 million Jews as part of a premeditated and heinous program for their total annihilation. Given the Jewish people's history and its foundational texts, it is not surprising that Israel was among the first states to ratify the Genocide Convention without reservation and to incorporate its provisions in its domestic legislation. For some, the promise of never again for all peoples is a slogan. For Israel, it is the highest moral obligation. Raphael Lemkin, a Polish Jew who witnessed the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust, is credited with coining the term genocide. He helped the world recognize that the existing legal lexicon was simply inadequate to capture the devastating evil that the Nazi Holocaust unleashed. The applicant has now sought to invoke this term in the context of Israel's conduct in a war it did not start and did not want.
No, that's not
A
true.
war in which Israel is defending itself against Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other terrorist organizations whose brutality knows no
I'll
bounds.
probably say this a lot. Not a defense of genocide.
The civilian
It's not a
suffering
defense
in
of
this
genocide.
war, like in all wars, is tragic. It is heartbreaking. The harsh
But they
realities
need
of
to
the
do
current
it,
hostilities
is what Israel's
are made
arguing.
especially agonizing for civilians, given Hamas's reprehensible strategy of seeking to maximize civilian harm to both Israelis and Palestinians, even as Israel seeks to minimize it.
Not
But as
true.
this court has already made clear,
This is one of the
the
highest civilian
Genocide
death
Convention
tolls.
was not designed to address the brutal impact of
I'll
intensive
get the statistic,
hostilities
but it's
on the
modern
civilian
history.
population,
90%,
even when the use
80
of
to
force
90% civilian
raises quote,
casualties.
very serious issues of international law and involves enormous suffering and continuing loss of life, end quote. The convention was set apart to address a malevolent crime of the most exceptional severity. We live at a time when words are cheap. In an age of social media and identity politics, the temptation to reach for the most outrageous term, to vilify and demonize, has become for many irresistible. But if there is a place where words should still matter, where truth should still matter, it is surely a court of law. The applicant has regrettably put before the court a profoundly distorted factual and legal picture. The entirety of its case hinges on a deliberately curated, decontextualized, and manipulative description of the reality of current hostilities. South Africa purports to come to this court in the lofty position of a guardian of the interest of humanity. But in delegitimizing Israel's 75-year existence in its opening presentation yesterday, that broad commitment to humanity rang hollow. And in its sweeping counterfactual description of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it seemed to erase both Jewish history and any Palestinian agency or responsibility. Indeed, the delegitimization of Israel, since its very establishment in 1948 in the applicant's submissions, sounded barely distinguishable from Hamas's own rejectionist rhetoric. It is unsurprising, therefore, that in the applicant's telling, both Hamas's responsibility for the situation in Gaza and the very humanity of its Israeli victims are removed from view. The attempt to weaponize the term genocide against Israel in the present context does more than tell the court a grossly distorted story. And it does more than empty the word of its unique force and special meaning. It subverts the object and purpose of the convention itself, with ramifications for all states seeking to defend themselves against those who demonstrate total disdain for life and for the law. Madam President, members of the court, on Saturday, October 7th, a Jewish religious holiday, thousands of Hamas and other militants breached Israeli sovereign territory by sea, land and air, invading over 20 Israeli communities, bases and the site of a music festival. What proceeded, under the cover of thousands of rockets fired indiscriminately into Israel, was the wholesale massacre, mutilation, rape and abduction of as many citizens as the terrorists could find before Israel's forces repelled them. Openly displaying elation, they tortured children in front of parents.
I just want to say that, this is pretty much all they can argue, I guess. Is, there was a terrorist attack, a terrorist attack by a terrorist organization. And, again, not a defense of genocide. What he's describing is what Israel's doing now on a, what's it called, industrial scale. Using fighter jets, using, should be guided missiles, I shouldn't say that even. Just using dumb bombs to blow up civilian areas. More than 20,000 civilian, casualties, and largely civilians, because that's what happens when you blow up an apartment buildings, schools, hospitals. Again, these are our allies that we're supporting at the moment.
And broadcast their barbarism. The events of that day are all but...
And I should also say, before he started talking about the 7th of October, I'm very pleased because that was actually a great case for Palestine, for South Africa in this case. Their argument, talking about the Holocaust. These are things that are comparable to what's happening at the moment, of an industrial scale of concentration camps. And of course, this is not self-defense. If you blow up apartment buildings, it creates more anger, it creates more of a threat, not just to Israel, to everyone, to the international community.
Access has been provided to a portion of the raw footage for separate screening. But I am obliged to put before the court today some small fragment of the scenes of unfathomable cruelty that took place in hundreds of locations on that horrible day. Johnny Simantov, a wheat farmer, and his wife Tamar, an activist for women's rights, lived in kibbutz near Og.
And this is what I thought they might do. So Palestine, South Africa yesterday put forward, they could show all the atrocities. They could show all the atrocities that's currently happening in Palestine, but they chose not to. You know, you either have seen it or you haven't. You know, it's on a daily basis. You know, thousands of bombs being dropped. So they weren't making that argument in this case because they were just making the legal argument. They were saying, here is what Israel is doing and how they're breaking the Genocide Convention. And I think that was the right approach. So in this case, Israel is going to show a whole bunch of atrocities and trying to say that, okay, because this happened, we can now do atrocities. Yeah. Let's see, I bet a lot of the stuff that they put out previously and said, oh, this is what happened on 7th of October, they won't be putting a lot of that out because they made up a lot of it. So this should be actually very insightful in terms of, you know, what are they willing to bring to court? What evidence are they willing to bring to court? Because will be more interesting is what they don't bring to court in terms of 7th of October. Because I don't think they'll bring it to court if they faked it. You know, a lot of that stuff about babies was fake. So with that in mind, here is, you know, 7th of October, which has now been repeated multiple times for every single day for the last 3 months in Gaza.
As stated, none of these atrocities absolve Israel of its obligations under the law. But they do enable the court to appreciate 3 core aspects of the present proceedings, which the applicant has obscured from view. First, that if there have been acts that may be characterized as genocidal, then they have been perpetrated against Israel. If there is
you can't say that because purely from a legal perspective, as much as that attack was terrible, they do not have the capacity to do it. Straight up, you know. So,
and is not in doubt. The annihilationist language of Hamas's charter is repeated regularly by its leaders, with the goal, in the words of one member of Hamas's political bureau, of the cleansing of Palestine of the filth of the Jews. It is expressed no less chillingly in the words of senior Hamas member Razi Hamad to Lebanese television on October 24th, 2023, who refers to the October 7th attacks, what Hamas calls the Al-Aqsa flood, as follows.
again, are we going to hold... I'm happy for this to be heard because of all of it to be heard, but what standard are we going to hold Israel to? The same standard? Higher standard? Lower standard? We're giving them weapons?
Yes, of course, he says. The existence of Israel is illogical. And then he says, nobody should blame us for the things we do. On October 7th, October 10th, October 1,000,000th, everything we do is justified.
You can see this, people aren't... This is actually really interesting, I think. That sounds a bit morbid. But, October 7th was so terrible, right? So... Now we're seeing the last 3 months of people and apartment buildings getting bombed, the dehumanization of an entire group of people. I think it helps to understand how this conflict has kept going on, right? Coming out of this, we're going to have to deal with all these families, kids that are going to very much want revenge, So we're really seeing in real time how October 7th came about. We've really, as the West, failed the people of Palestine for decades. People in Gaza, they don't have control of their water, electricity, airspace, their ports, get killed indiscriminately in, the West Bank, We can see why it keeps happening. So it's not about picking sides. We've got to stop this nonsense. And unfortunately, Israel's arguing to continue.
And treats the hostages still held in captivity as barely an afterthought. But is there a reason these people...
I have to say also, Israel has not have not been protecting the hostages. They've been bombing the hostages, killing the hostages. I said the word.
Hamas is not a party to these proceedings. The applicant, by its request, seeks to thwart Israel's inherent right to defend itself. To let
Hamas is not a party to these proceedings. That's the problem, right? Why? Because we've turned our back on an entire people.
Astonishing claim that Israel was denied this right, and as a matter of fact should not be able to protect itself from Hamas's attacks. But allow me to draw attention to these words written by Professor Vaughan Lowe. Quote, "The source of the attack, whether a state or non-state actor, is irrelevant to the existence of the right to defense. Force may be used to avert a threat because no one and no state is obliged by law passively to suffer the delivery of an attack." Israel agrees with these words, as I suspect would any sovereign state. If the claim of the
They're not arguing against... No one's arguing against that. It's the genocide that's a problem.
Israel must be denied the ability to defend its citizens, then the absurd upshot of South Africa's argument is this. Under the guise of the allegation against Israel of genocide, this court is asked to call for an end to operations against the ongoing attacks of an organization that pursues an actual genocidal agenda.
This is just gaslighting, right? Since 7th of October, all casualties have been on the Palestinian side. This is just gaslighting. This is so to accuse the other side of it's just silliness.
Organization that has violated every past ceasefire and used it to rearm and plan new atrocities. An organization that declares its unequivocal resolve to advance its genocidal plans. That is an unconscionable request.
I'm not doing it, you're doing it. That's the level of argument. It's fine because this is not a legal case. It is, as I suspected, largely rather than a defense of genocide. It's actually they're trying to justify it and saying, no, we can do this. So this is not gonna help in their court case, but it will. As a PR piece, it might work. No, that's right. Israel has no right to do what they've done.
and it is
Australia needs to stop.
respectfully submitted
America needs
that
to
it
stop
cannot
supporting
stand.
it.
Third, the court is
We really
informed
quite
of the
silly.
events of
Thanks,
October
Ken.
7th because if there are any provisional measures that should appropriately be indicated here, they are indeed with respect to South Africa. It is a matter of public record that South Africa enjoys close relations with Hamas, despite its formal recognition as a terrorist organization by numerous states across the world. These relations have continued unabated even after the October 7th atrocities.
I should also mention Israel as our ally. There are members of the Israeli parliament that are recognized international members of terrorist organizations. You know, should we hold them to a different standard than Hamas? Yeah. If we're giving them weapons and diplomatic support, absolutely. You know, they're not. You know, they claim to be a democracy. They claim to. You know, well, they're an ethno-state.
South Africa has long hosted and celebrated its ties with Hamas figures, including a senior Hamas delegation that, incredibly, visited the country for a, quote, solidarity gathering just weeks after the massacre. In justifying instituting proceedings, South Africa makes much of its obligations under the Genocide Convention. It seems fitting then that it be instructed to comply with those obligations itself, to end its own language of delegitimization of Israel's existence, end its support for Hamas.
It's not a case against they're not defending themselves. This is us a hearing about genocide. None of this is a defense.
And use its influence with this organization so that Hamas permanently ends its campaign of genocidal terror and releases the hostages. Madam President, members of the court.
And so just to reiterate that there is terrible death being rained down in Palestine, in Gaza, and this is, regular people use this argument as to say, you know, unless you release the hostages, we are going to continue bombing apartment buildings, hospitals, schools. Unless you meet our demands, we are going to continue to blow civilians up. Which is effectively what's happening. Now, who's a terrorist?
The hostilities between Israel and Hamas have exacted a terrible toll on both Israelis and Palestinians. But any genuine effort to understand the cause of this toll must take it.
And just to clarify, we need to get those hostages out. This channel, War is Dumb, is about, you know, it's about people. It's not about sides. It just so happens that in this case, a imperial ethno-state that we support is currently doing this genocide. But, you know, people are people.
Account of the horrendous reality created by Hamas within the Gaza Strip. When Israel withdrew all its soldiers and civilians from Gaza in 2005, it left a coastal area with the potential to become a political and economic success story. Hamas's violent takeover in 2007 changed all that. Over the past 16 years of its rule,
I didn't know, and I do not take that word for word. It wasn't a violent takeover. It was very much supported by Israel, and since that date, there's been a complete blockade on Gaza. They are not they are not really the government in Gaza. Israel controls electricity, water, ports, airspace, etc.
Hamas has smuggled countless weapons into Gaza and has diverted billions in international aid, not to build schools, hospitals, or shelters to protect its population from the dangers of the attacks it launched against Israel over many years. but rather to turn massive swaths of the civilian infrastructure into perhaps the most sophisticated terrorist stronghold in the history of urban warfare. Remarkably, counsel for the applicant described the suffering in Gaza as unparalleled and unprecedented, as if
Not a justification for a genocide.
they are unaware of the utter devastation wrought in wars that have raged just in recent years around the world. Sadly, the civilian suffering in warfare is not unique to Gaza. What is actually unparalleled and unprecedented is the degree to which Hamas has entrenched itself within the civilian population and made Palestinian civilian suffering an integral...
Even if that's true, even if it were true, again, it doesn't mean you can just go blow up civilians.
...part of its strategy. Hamas has systematically and unlawfully embedded its military operations, militants and assets throughout Gaza, within and beneath densely populated civilian areas. It has built an extent...
And just to say Gaza is like, isn't it like 20 miles long by 5 or something like that? That's not 100%, it's like 4 by 15 or something like that. It's like, I'm from Perth. It's smaller than Perth. It's smaller than Perth. And the population of Perth was asked to leave Gaza in 24 hours. That's ethnic cleansing. Also impossible. Also full of hospitals. I've got to actually head off. I'm sorry, I didn't plan this out very well. But anyway, it's my first live stream. I might get banned already, we'll see. I didn't do that on purpose, I'm still learning. But here, go here and watch it. I'm just putting it in the chat. The ABC isn't covering it, so please do watch.